G'day everyone, and welcome to episode number 17 of the Australian Rock Show. My name is Dennis Gray from the Rockin' and Rollin' Gray Brothers. Today is Friday the 1st of May 2015 when this show is being recorded. Steve Mulry has been on the Australian rock and roll scene for over 3 decades, the majority of which has been spent fronting Sydney outfit Black Label, who are, in the long-held opinion of the Gray Brothers, the best live band in Australia. An outfit whose material equals anything recorded by some of our other heroes, and I am alluding to bands like Rose Tattoo and the Angels. Big statement, but Black Label's body of work, especially their 2010 album Blood Money, backs this up, and then some. Steve is one of the hardest working musicians out there, and over the past couple of years he's been involved in some side projects outside of Black Label, including an amazing solo album called Rock Rebel. A couple of days back, on Tuesday the 28th of April, we got a hold of Steve and had a good chat about his life in rock and roll, his much missed Big Brother Ted, the mighty Black Label, and lots more. Before we play the interview, let's get in the mood by cranking a tune. From the Rock Rebel album, here is Steve Mulry with Wanna Be With You. Steve Mulry, welcome to the Australian Rock Show.
Thank you very much. Great to be here.
Mate, sorry it has taken so long to get you on the show. I recall bumping into you at Skinner's Sydney show last year, over a year back now, and inviting you on the show, and it's great that we can finally get you on board. And I know that you were heavily influenced by Lynyrd Skynyrd. Personally, I thought they were amazing that night. It was a dream come true to have them in Australia.
Oh, absolutely.
And
absolutely.
Personally, I had a blast, and just to finally hear tunes like Simple Man or Working for MCA aired live, very, very special. And, you know, watching Ricky Medlock wailing away in Freebird, I could have died right then and there. How about you? I'm guessing you also enjoyed them that night?
Oh, fantastic. I actually bought their most recent album at the time, which is called Last of a Dying Breed.
Okay.
Terrific album. So we had to go and see them, and they were terrific.
In what way have they influenced you? Is it Ronnie's lyrics or just the overall sound? It's a pretty broad question, I know, but...
as far as the Skynyrd sound, you mean?
Yeah, like how have they influenced you?
Well, look, in Black Label, what I'm saying early days, I mean, the band started a long time ago, but the first album we didn't record until 2000, and I would say our first album, which was called The Dealer, is very much influenced by early Skynyrd. In fact, I didn't realise how much until I listened to it I hadn't listened to the album for so long, probably about 3 or 4 years ago. I listened to it again and realised how southern that album was, the Dealer album, and it brought home to me why so many other people were mentioning the southern rock thing, and I didn't realise how influenced we were at the time. Obviously, we've changed slightly since then, and of course, so has Skynyrd slightly changed since then.
But as you have correctly mentioned, Skynyrd still release killer records, and that one I picked up Vicious Cycle, which is 10 years ago now, and Last of a Dying Breed, which are great
Mm.
And I don't know, have you heard some of the material which Johnny and Donnie Van Zant have done recently? They put out a solo album, couple of solo albums. One called Get Right With the Man. You need to hear that if you haven't.
I have to be honest, I haven't heard it at all.
I'm sure you dig that. I'll get that in the post for you. But mate, we started today's show with a cut from your Rock Rebel album, Wanna Be With You. And to be honest, mate, the hardest part about piecing together this show was selecting just one song from that gathering of tunes to play, because there's just so many great ones. Stuff like Hearts of Fire, Travelling Band, Rock and Roll Is Here to Stay, What Have I Got to Lose?
Yeah, I mean...
They're all straight down the line thumping rock and roll, which is right up our alley. So congratulations on that album, but we just need more people to hear these tunes.
It's hard these days. I mean, there's so many independent artists. I mean, there always has been a lot of independent artists, but of course these days you hear about them more because of all the tools that independent artists have. But we're all in the same boat. It's very still hard these days to compete with record companies, even though there's so much talk about record companies being the old way of doing things. But it's still hard to get people to hear your stuff. Like a lot of people is what I'm talking about, unless you can get some good radio airplay.
That particular song, which we just kicked off with, "Want to Be with You," how did that one come about?
Look, I've got to tell you the truth about these songs. That whole album was actually written for me, and what happened? A friend of mine, I've known him for quite a number of years, over 20 years. He's been a songwriter for years and years and years, and he used to hire singers to come in and do his songs. Anyway, he did it a couple of times and wasn't happy with results, and so he said to me, he just mentioned it to me about all these songs he had. I said, well, let me have a listen to it. So he gave me a bunch to listen to, and I liked them. I mean, I liked most of them. I can't say I liked every single song that he had, but that's like any band, isn't it? There's always
like
one
everything.
or two songs on an album that are probably filler. And I really liked the stuff that he'd written. It was sort of, to me, yes, there were new songs, but they had that old school thing about them, which I really liked, the older rock, 70s, 80s stuff, and it reminded me more of that kind of, that style. So I agreed to do the songs for him, and he organised the musicians and whatnot for the recording, and that's how it all came about. I really like Want to Be With You. In fact, there's probably about 3 tracks on the album I like above any others, and that's one of them.
Has that got Di Pritchard from the Tats?
Yeah, that's right. Di played all guitars on the whole album. Right. And in fact, the bass player on all the tracks was Ian Lees from Moving Pictures. And I had several piano players and a couple of different drummers on it. In fact, one of the piano players, keyboardist, was Warren Morgan. Pig Morgan from
Sure.
From
goes back to the Thorpe days.
Yeah,
and
John Paul Young's band, and also
he was in. Yeah, that's right. He was in JPY's All Stars.
Well, that's right. So it was a good mix of musos and I like the songs. And of course, the musicians made all the difference. I think just their style of playing and their approach made all the difference.
Okay, and that album, Rock Rebel, is that only available as a digital download?
Yes, it is at the moment. I mean, as I said, the guy who wrote all the songs, he took the helm of everything. He for his own sake, it was best for him to only do it digitally because he had no real way of distribution. And because the band itself or the music itself wasn't being played live, I didn't actually do shows to promote that album. There was no venues to sell them in.
Sure.
Which Black Label does. We sell all our stuff at gigs, most of our stuff. But he didn't have
I guess if people like that tune, which we played to kick off the show, I encourage you to explore more of Steve's Rock Rebel album from places like iTunes and CD Baby.
That's true.
And I guess, mate, some of that material is a couple of years old now, or when that was released. Are you personally working or writing on new solo material?
As far as that album is concerned, I think you're aware that I have another band called Weekend Detention.
Yep.
And that band actually plays a couple of different songs from that album. Even though Weekend Detention is really a blues rock, but we do a lot of covers of a lot of older bands, particularly well-known bands like the Rolling Stones, but it's the obscure tracks that we play. We don't do like Jumpin' Jack Flash or Brown Sugar. We do a lot of album tracks, and so we've integrated a couple of songs from the Rock Rebel album into that set for Weekend Detention. But as far as writing new material, currently writing a new album for Black Label. We wanted to make it an EP this time rather than an album because we find, at the end of the night when people mainly come to your merch table, they've probably only got $10 left in their pocket rather than, because we sell our albums for $20 normally. And so we thought, well, get a product out that was only $10. So that's what we're looking at doing, just getting a 6-track EP out and let it go for $10. And of course, several months down the track, release another 10 because we find, another 5 or 6 songs because we find that people who come to your gigs often want to take something home from most gigs, and when they bought all your merch, what do they do then? You know what I mean?
Agreed, and that's one of my questions later tonight. You are working on new Black Label material, and it's great to hear that there'll be another album or an EP out sometime this year. But So besides Black Label, I know that, as you just mentioned, you divide your time in a couple of other outfits, Weekend Detention, which you just mentioned, and also there was another band called Bitzer, whom I really, really like.
Yeah.
The Weekend Detention, I know that you formed that with Geordie from Black Label about 3 years back. Was the idea for that band just to blow off steam, play some blues tunes by some of your heroes?
Yeah, I mean, that how that all came about, it was in December 2011. And Geordie had always talked about, you know, he's very much into blues and very much into the Skinner sound of things. And Black Label had obviously over the years slightly moved away from that because of the different members we'd had in the band, and our songwriting had changed because of the members who were in the band.
Sure.
So he'd always talked about that, and we never had done anything about it. So in December of 2011, I rang him up and I said, mate, are you still interested in just doing something, you know, a bit bluesy? We just get together and have a jam? He said, yeah, sure. So a couple of hours later, he rang me back and he said, I've got two guys organised. We're going to have a jam. I said,
brilliant.
Okay. So we got together, and to be honest, I think he brought, he and the guitarist at the time brought about 10 songs to you know, just have a jam on. I'd never heard any of them. I'd never heard any of the songs before. So what happened was the guitarist would play the song and sing it to me, and then I'd take the lyrics off him and I'd sing the song and the band would play. The bass player just followed whatever the guitarist was playing, and away we went. And we enjoyed it so much that we decided to do it again 2 weeks later. And while this was happening, we had no intention at all, or Geordie and I didn't, of actually playing live, because obviously Black Label was our main focus, and it still is now. But we were asked if Black Label could do a particular show, and unfortunately at the time, one of the members wasn't available to do the show, and we mentioned that we had another band that could do this particular show, so we got booked. So, you know, we had about 30 songs thrown together, and we did this show, and I was reading most of the songs on a music stand because I hadn't really learned them properly, not thinking I was going to have to do any gigs.
Sure.
And from that one gig, we got another gig and then another gig, and I thought, oh, gee, I better learn these songs. And all of a sudden, Weekend Detention was actually playing more than Black Label was. But around at the moment, it's fairly even. Both bands are gigging quite often. So
yeah, and you've got Dennis Val from Love Child in that band.
Correct. He wasn't originally in the band, but he joined about nearly 2 years ago now.
We plan on having Dennis on the show sometime this year, but Dave Gleason from the Jets recently got up and jammed. Is that correct?
He did, actually. It was just probably about 2 months ago now. He came to a gig at Leichhardt. It was a mutual friend of ours was having a birthday that particular day, and Dave came along, and so he got up and did a couple of songs. I think he did an AC/DC song, which we don't normally do. Weekend Detention doesn't do, but we just did it, and he sang it. And we also did another song that we don't normally do, which was by Creedence Clearwater Revival, and that was called Fortunate Son. And funnily enough, that's a song that Black Label now does in their set as well. So, but yeah, look, Dave got up and sang it. We had a great afternoon. It was terrific.
Let me just plug a couple of upcoming gigs where people can go and see Weekend Detention. We've got this Saturday, the 2nd of May. You're at and this has been going for ages, I know, the Brass Monkey Bike Rally at the Rydal Showground. That's out near Lithgow, isn't it?
That's right, and it's really cold. Okay. If anybody thinks they're going to come out there, we played there last year. Black Label played last year, and it was absolutely freezing.
Get some fires lit.
There's people everywhere, bonfires everywhere, people camp there, there's tents everywhere. It was a really good place, really good atmosphere.
Good fun.
But as I said, a bit chilly.
Then you've got, for Weekend Detention, you've got Sunday the 31st of May at the Penrith Hotel in Penrith.
That's right.
And Sunday 7th of June at the Bald-Faced Stag.
Yep, we do a lot of gigs at the Bald-Faced Stag. Yep.
Yeah. So head to weekend-detention.com for upcoming dates and some good band info there. But I want to go back to that Bitzer EP, Steve, which was released a couple of years back now and has some really seasoned players on it and was very, very good.
Oh, yes.
So you got Lucy DeSoto on keyboards and vocals, Steve King and the Tats on bass, Mick O'Shea on drums, who I saw a bunch of times back in the day with Judge Mercy, and phenomenal drummer. And Steve Edmonds on guitar and Mick Arnold on slide guitar.
Too, actually.
Was that Lucy's idea to piece Bitzer together?
Yeah, look, it was another person sort of contacted Lucy. I won't say any names, but he wanted to finance a project, a particular project, and so he talked to Lucy, and he had a bunch of people in mind. Several of them didn't want to do it, so it was mainly quite a number of Lucy's band, the Handsome Devils, who actually were on played on it, and we did the show live. And Mick was one of. In fact, most of the people in that were at Lucy's band. That were Steve King, as you said. Mick O'Shea was in Lucy's band. Mick Arnold, the other the slide player, he was in Lucy's band. And this fella who contacted Lucy wanted me to sing, and I said yes straight away, jumped straight in. And Steve Edmonds, and it was a really good combination. I really liked the songs that were picked, and I thought we did a reasonably good job of them as well.
Oh, phenomenal. And there's some great covers on there.
Yeah.
From memory, you got Riff Raff and Marseille.
Yep.
La-Di-Da's Going to See My Baby Tonight.
Yep.
And the Oils tune, which we played some episodes back now, No Time for Games.
Oh, yeah, I love that. I loved
smoking.
Yeah, loved it.
Phenomenal.
Thank you.
So was that just each particular member put forward their favourites, or how did that work?
What, the actual song? Sorry, what was it?
Whatever. Yeah, the final cut for that EP.
Oh, okay. When we recorded, we only recorded, I think there's 6 songs on it, I believe.
Yeah.
I haven't even heard it myself for so long.
Really? Have you heard, I'm just going to, sorry to interrupt, but I really, really like Lucy's laid-back version of Bad Boy, or should I say Bad Girl for Love.
Yeah, that's right.
So great to hear a different interpretation of a tune, which we all know so well.
Yeah.
Do you agree?
Yeah. I mean, Ian Ryland wrote that one, I believe. And
absolutely, he did.
Lucy was saying to us that when Ian was actually writing that tune, he actually had that style and version was the way that he was writing it.
Really?
Yeah, but it became obviously what it did become. And so she wanted to take it back to that, and that's where that idea came from. And I think it's a fantastic version.
Oh, it is. Agreed.
Yeah.
And Steve Edmonds, who we just mentioned, he's such an awesome blues player, and it's a tragedy that guys like him are not better well known.
Absolutely.
Did Mick Arnold, again, we're going to try and get Steve on the show sometime this year, but I think Mick Arnold, did he have a stint playing slide for the Tats?
Yes, he did. He did a stint in the Tats for a while. I think at one stage when they toured overseas as well, Mick was in the band for a little while. And did a great job. He's a fantastic slide player. And just as a side note from that, and I keep going back to Black Label, but probably about 8 or 9 weeks ago, one of our guitar players couldn't make a show that we'd booked, and Mick Arnold stepped in and played the gig with us.
Nice.
He did, was it 2 or 3 sets? I can't remember, but it absolutely blew me away. He played fantastically. So,
well, one song, Steve, which didn't make the EP, that Bitzer EP, was the Dragon cover, Sunshine, which I've heard. And that's astounding. So if you plan on doing another EP, you got to include that, I think.
I love that. Funnily enough, when we did the Bitzer CD, we actually recorded only the 6 songs. And then it was a few months later when the same person who financed that project asked if we'd do a couple of more songs. So probably about, 10 songs were thrown at us as to what to choose, and we could throw songs in as well. And that's when we came up with Sunshine. And we came up with another one as well, which I can't even remember. I'm doing well, aren't I? I can't remember the songs I've done. But I really love that version of Sunshine. Yeah.
Was that just in one take you did that?
Yes.
Mate, if you're having trouble remembering some of this stuff, I'm going to make you think a bit harder, because we're going to drift back a bit now and look at some of your days growing up.
Yeah.
Do you recall maybe the first record you bought or the first concert you attended?
Oh, gee. It was probably a TMG one, to be honest.
You may as well start in a great way.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly don't remember that, but obviously that influence with Ted, I think, because I didn't go out much, I was very shy in the old days, and I didn't go out much, and I think probably the first gig I went to probably was a TMG gig.
Nice. Well, I know that 2 of your major influences growing up were Thin Lizzy and Ronnie James Dio.
Yes.
Let's start a little bit with Thin Lizzy. So what was it? Was it the twin guitar attack which sucked you in, or Lynette's voice?
With Dio.
With Thin Lizzy. With Thin Lizzy.
Look, with Ronnie, I've been a big fan of Ronnie Dio. I think the very first time I heard him sing was in 1977, and it was a track that had released in 1974. It was the Butterfly Ball. And I just thought he was an amazing vocalist then, you know. And then all of a sudden I found out he was in a band called Rainbow, so I started listening to the Rainbow stuff. I loved that, just absolutely loved Rainbow. And then he joined Black Sabbath, and funnily enough, it was because of him joining Black Sabbath that I started to like Black Sabbath.
Okay.
So it you know, because being a vocalist myself, it's always the singer that drags me in. But having said that, my favourite all-time band was Thin Lizzy, right? Which I wouldn't say Phil Lynott was the greatest singer in the world, but in that band, it was the guitars that pulled me in.
Agreed.
Absolutely, and that's why our first album as well, The Dealer, very much twin guitar stuff, was drawn, even though it had a lot of Skinner-sounding stuff, American Southern stuff, still that the twin guitars is also American Southern as well, but also the Thin Lizzy influence was there.
Well, personally, I was and am a massive fan of Ronnie James Dio, and I think that if you look at his vocal range, it can shift from really, really sweet, say something like Catch the Rainbow, to, I don't know, Last in Line or whatever he did with his We Rock. Actually, a Sabbath tune, which you'll know, something like Children of the Sea is a better example, where Ronnie's vocals start off really, really mellow, yet he roars later in that song. Do you know what I mean?
I love that as well. That was off the Heaven and Hell album, I think, wasn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Did you see them when he toured in '86?
Yeah, I actually, yes, I did. I saw him when he came out with his band in 1986, but I also saw him in Black Sabbath in 1980.
80, yeah.
You know, when I was 6 months old, and
I was three months.
Oh mate, fantastic. In fact, when I first saw them in 1980, the support band was Rose Tattoo.
They were.
So that was terrific. And then I saw him in '86, and then I saw him, I think, when they came out as Heaven and Hell, which I think was that 2007? Oh,
look, dates get a bit hazy, but yeah, I saw him on that tour. But funnily enough, you mentioned that the Tats had the support in '80. You know, other bands which would come into your career as well in '86, Boss and White Widow,
very much so,
had the Sydney support in '86,
right.
And that was. Yeah, I was there that night. It was phenomenal.
Oh, I was there too.
I saw them in London, Hammersmith '93 as well. A version of Dio, which was also just come out on DVD, which is pretty good. But Sabbath. I went to Wollongong in Sydney to see that. Well, they weren't called Sabbath. There was some contractual thing, wasn't there? They were called Heaven and Hell.
Yeah.
Phenomenal. I never thought I'd see them. That lineup again.
It's the same lineup from 1980.
It was phenomenal.
Amazing.
Mate, I don't want to get too far off track with some of this stuff, but I'm not sure how much older Ted was to you, but at what age did you become aware that your brother was a genuine rock and roll star?
Well, I mean, he started in 1970, right? The beginning of 1970. I was 9 years old. I was turning 10 that year.
Right.
And he was becoming a star in 1970 because of the song Julia. And so, you know, I knew something was happening even then at the age of 9 because everybody was asking me for his autograph. So, you know, I'd come home and the record company had all these photos that they give him of himself, and so he'd just sign those and give them to me, and I'd go back to school. So I knew something was happening even then, you know. But obviously it was in 1975 with the single Jump in My Car that really blew it out of the water.
So you've got a lot of years to cover, but you must have some amazing memories. Does one or two particular moments stand out?
Well, you know, it's funny. I think we only ever gigged at the same place together twice in all those years.
Right.
But what I remember the most and what I miss the most is when every Christmas time Ted would come to Mum and Dad's place. You know, even when I was still living at home, before I left home, and even years later, we'd all congregate there at Christmas time, and he'd get his guitar out, and you know, he'd start singing, and I'd start singing with him. We'd be harmonising. We'd just doing like some Beatles songs or whatever took our fancy at the time, you know. And that's what I miss more than anything else is getting together and having family time away from gigs and stuff like that.
Sure.
You know? And he used to take videos every year. He used to put his video camera in the corner of the room somewhere, and he'd film everything that was going on. And we still have some of those videos now. Mum has them, which is terrific. And it brings back memories, wonderful memories.
So, musically, Steve, how much of an inspiration was Ted, and in what way do you think?
I think, because I was a late starter in music, and what I mean by that is, I was 22 before I joined a real band, and funnily enough, when his first single came out, he was 22. That's interesting enough as it is.
Right. Okay.
But the thing was, he'd been playing ever since he was like 4. He started learning to play an instrument, and I'm not that way inclined. I'm not. I can play very very limited bass guitar and very limited piano, only for when I'm writing, not for playing. Do you know what I mean? Like to play in a band, I couldn't do it. But he was a musician through and through, and a songwriter, a very good songwriter. Now his influence on me, I think, as I was saying earlier, I was so shy that I tried to join a band when I was 17. Like some friends of mine said, "Oh, well, we'll get Steve in the band. His brother's a singer; he'll be a singer too." And I went along, but I was so shy I couldn't even sing in front of the 3 members of the band.
Right. And
I just left, And it was some 5 years later. But I do believe if it hadn't have been for Ted being in music at all, I probably wouldn't have started because, as I said, I was just too shy to even consider it. So in that way, he was a massive influence on me. And of course, the singers that he listened to, he was a major fan, obviously, of the Beatles, but mainly he was a big fan of Paul Rodgers as a vocalist. And I caught that bug as well with Rodgers sometime later. One of the greatest singers, blues rock singers ever. And I think having those records around at home at the time really helped develop the way I wanted to sing as well.
It's a great education, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely.
So you obviously know those TMG records back to front, but do you ever put one of those records on and hear something which still blows you away? And I'll give you an example. Like a tune like I'm Free, it has that searing lead guitar on it via Les Hall, which still sounds so amazing. Yeah. Way underrated guitar player, by the way, who never gets the recognition he deserves, in my opinion. Way underrated. Yeah. But and I recently played TMG's take of Bobby Womack's It's All Over Now, obviously made famous by the Stones, which was the B-side to Steppin' Out on that album. But I hadn't heard it in ages. But when I heard the harmonising, where they all tune in with Because I Used to Love Her on that tune, I just thought, wow, that's little moments like that, and there's some real magic found in those albums.
Oh, true.
So can you name a couple of your favourite songs or moments by Ted and the reasons why?
That's good. I mean, have you heard any of the solo albums, these first 2 solo albums at all?
Yeah, my brother's got those. We used to play all that stuff.
Look, to pick out individual tracks is difficult. I really liked, one of my favourite albums was his second solo album, which was called I Won't Look Back. And that has some great tracks on it. A song called Train. Just I can remember it now. I haven't played it for probably 30 years. But I still remember that song standing out. I really love that song. It had a synthesizer in it as well, and just sounded just really good for the in the age that it came out. Other stuff. I really liked an album that they brought out called Locked In, and I think that was around about 1980. And had some. There was some bit of a different bass playing style on that album as well, and there's some great tracks. I think one track's called Strangers, which I really like. And there's another one about, there's another one song that was a political song, and Shake It Up, I think it's called. Okay. There's some really good tracks like that. I don't play the albums, mainly because I'm too busy. But whenever I do revisit anything, I think, bloody hell, that's good stuff,
It is, and that's what I find when I take the time to sit and rediscover, records I know so well. I still hear stuff, and actually, Steve, my favourite TMG track was actually written by Les, which is Heart of Stone from 1978.
Okay.
And, mate, I wasn't planning on playing any TMG, but what the hell? Part of this podcast's aim is to educate, and I think it's such a great song from, as we just said, the very underrated and often overlooked Disturbing the Peace album.
Oh, yes.
Have you ever thought about re-recording this tune yourself? I think you should. I think you do a great take on it.
Well, I've done a couple of different TMG songs live at different times, but I released an album. So I released a single. I think it was 1987. I was in a band at the time called the M16s.
We're going to get to that. You're reading my research, mate.
I'm jumping ahead, aren't I?
And I bought. My brother bought that M16. Sure.
We released a TMG song.
That's right.
And funnily enough, Ted actually was producing that song in the studio when we played it. That was one of the best songs. I really love that song, "Giving Up on Your Love."
Yeah.
But I actually mentioned something on Facebook probably about 6 weeks ago on the TMG Facebook site, because people are getting a little bit itchy. They want a box set release, because we've been talking about it for years of getting a box set release, but it's not as easy as it sounds, because there's different record companies involved, such as EMI and Festival. So to get a box set between the two companies is a little bit of a task. But I mentioned that maybe Black Label should record every single album TMG did. Do a version of it.
Oh, now you're talking. That'd be good.
I mentioned obviously it won't be as good as the original version. It's very hard to be better than the original. But I was actually thinking of that. I thought that wouldn't be a bad idea, just as a project. But I worry sometimes that people think that you're trying to cash in on stuff, and I never try.
No,
and do
I
that,
don't think so. I think your integrity is there for all to see. But mate, I think we're going to take a break.
Yep.
And as I said, from 1978, let's play some TMG. Here is Heart of Stone.
Terrific.
That was TMG with Heart of Stone, featuring the distinctive vocals of the late, great Ted Mulry. Tonight, we are honoured to be chatting with Ted's younger brother, Steve, who has, for the past 3 decades, and most recently with the band Black Label, carved out his own career of hot rock and roll. And Steve, I imagine you were proud to see David Hasselhoff take Ted's tune, Jump in My Car, to near the top of the UK charts back in 2006.
That's right. The UK charts and the German charts. I think went to number 3 in England.
He's big in Germany, isn't he, Hasselhoff? That's right.
Oh, yeah. He went to number 3 in England. I think went to number 1 in Germany. And the thing, look, a lot of people, unfortunately, have rubbished him for doing the song. And I think it made it to the Australian charts at top 50. I think it went to 50 in Australia. Of course, unfortunately for the Hoff, that song, I guess, is an iconic song by an Australian band, and it's hard to come in and do better. You know what I mean?
Sure.
But he, credit to him, he actually came to Australia and recorded the song here. On the same desk. He wanted to use the same desk, same equipment that TMG recorded on. And I think, that showed some respect for not only the band, but also for Australian equipment, and you know what I mean? And he even did the film clip. I believe he did the film clip out here, because I don't know if you've seen the film clip with, he's got the Knight Rider car in there, and all that. And I believe it's a right-hand drive.
Okay.
Trans Am that he used, because he's in Australia. But he did poke a lot of fun at himself during the song, and that's what I liked about it. Regardless of what anybody thinks of the actual version of the song, I think he the respect that he showed was far outweighed anything else in regards to how the song went. Agreed.
And look, I saw TMG a few times, but I know that my brother and I made a great effort to catch them a lot, circa 90 to 92, the time that the Old Habits 7-inch was released. And I think for a time they had Mick Cox in the band. And I thought with Coxie in the band, they were incredible. The dynamic of the band got a little heavier, I think.
Yeah, I agree. And
I think Fess from the Rads he may have been in the band as well.
Yeah. Fess was, he wasn't in for very long. And there's actually, if you look at the Old Habits.
That's right. They're both in the clip, aren't they?
Old Habits.
It's a good track.
Yeah. If you look at the the film clip. There's 3 guitarists in that film clip.
That's right.
With Fess and with Les, and I think it was an interesting time for them because they were. I think there was other things going on at the time, and at certain times, different guitarists couldn't come, you know. So they're all mates and all helping each other out, you know, basically. And that happened at a time with Rose Tattoo. I remember my brother Ted filled in for Rose Tattoo one night.
Yeah.
So, you know, they're all mates and they all helped each other out.
Do you know what I noticed back then, Steve? During those dates, there were a lot of younger people attending those gigs, and they were really into it. And I guess that these would have been fans who discovered TMG in the 80s maybe and had missed out in the halcyon days. So good music always finds its audience, beyond doubt. I really believe that.
Yeah. Oh, I agree. Totally agree. But, you know, different eras of music, I find now, particularly because we've done a lot of touring with the Angels, for instance, that we'd go to the Angels gigs and we'd perform, you know, and people accepted us really well. The Angels gigs, their crowd really loved us, you know. And funnily enough, when we finish, we get off, you know, and when we sort of get changed and we wander through the crowd, and you look at the crowd, and it's the same people who went to the gigs 40 years ago. You know? Sure. And so much so that a band such as the Angels it was so iconic that they still drag those people out of their homes, and people who are in their late 50s, 60s, going out to a rock and roll gig, you know, and you think, that's fantastic, you know.
It is. I wish there were more people on board because I had John Brewster on earlier this year, and, you know, bands like the Angels are not going to be around forever.
That's right.
So, you know, we've got to appreciate bands when they're around.
Yep.
But you know what? Before we move away from TMG, I know that there's been a petition to get the band inducted into the ARIA Hall of Fame, an honour which is way overdue. And a couple of years back, I wrote a blog post about this. And to summarise, TMG meet every criterion which the people at the Australian Recording Industry Association have laid out for induction.
Yes.
In 2015, there's no reason why this iconic Australian band are not in the Hall of Fame. The campaign is now on Facebook, so may I suggest that listeners take time out and head to facebook.com/tmg.aria.campaign and help get TMG honoured, because it's time already.
Yes. And also, I mean, there's even people that can be emailed directly. Unfortunately, I can't remember the email addresses, but they can be emailed directly to the ARIA board, you know, for suggestions of to say, you know, why is this band, which has covered all the criteria required to enter, why have they not been honoured in that way? And, you know, there are other bands who have entered who may not really have done what was required, and they're in there. So why not TMG?
The best way we can show support for that is to head to that campaign, I guess, and get people voting and get TMG inducted.
Yep.
So before, mate, you mentioned the M16s. My brother and I had that 7-inch. I know he bought it when the band released that, and we would spin it a lot, yeah.
Jeez.
And I've checked past gig dates, and I think it's possible we saw you with that band, because we used to see a band called Bandana quite
absolutely.
a bit. And I know, and I know that you guys supported those guys. So who knows?
That's
dates
right.
and places are fading fast. But so, can you tell me about the M16s? How long were you with them?
Sure. I joined the M16s in 1986. I was in that band. Funnily enough, it felt like a lot longer than what we were actually together, because we did so many gigs. And we toured around New South Wales, all country towns and stuff. But you know what? When I look at it, I think we were actually only together for 4 years.
Wow.
And it seems so much longer than that. We did, as I said, did so many gigs, and so much happened in such a short period of time. But funnily enough, the guitarist from that band, Wayne Wiseman, I was actually talking to him on the weekend, just gone, and he lives up at Foster now, and his daughter is making a name for herself as a solo artist. She's, you know, supporting James Rain, and I think she did Joan Armour trading support, and I think she's 17, just turned 18. And it's funny, you know, younger generations coming through from the same, you know, musicians that I played with. It's great to see these kids coming through.
Yeah.
But that band, I really enjoyed the M16s, and we still have people now who come to gigs and still remember those times back, like when I was in that band, and it amazes me how people remember these things.
Well, Steve, I want to play the A side of that M16's track now, Given Up on Your Love, which, as we mentioned, was written by Ted and Les Hall.
Yes.
This was, of course, a cover of the 1976 song included on TMG's Steppin' Out record. But so, do you have any memories of when you recorded this? Was it your idea or Ted's to choose that song? Or
Look, it was just a collective. It was. I mean, I personally probably didn't pick it. I probably wouldn't have picked a TMG because I was very, what's the right word, sensitive to doing my brother's songs.
Sure.
And I think it was, the rest of the band said, I reckon we should do this one. We really love this song, blah, blah, blah. So we did, and then I mentioned it to Ted, and he said, I wouldn't mind producing it. So we went to a studio in Cogra, and it was, what I remember, I know this has nothing to do with the music, what I remembered most about the recording session was the guy who owned the studio, who was there doing the engineering with Ted, was actually blind. He did a great mix, but that's the biggest thing I remember about the recording. It was actually that. It was just blew me away. There's a guy could run a mixing desk, when he couldn't see what he was doing. You know what I mean?
That's a great intro. Let's hear that now. Here are the M16s with Given Up on Your Love. The M16s there with Given Up on Your Love from 1986. Steve, can you help me out with your timeline a bit? After the M16s, you end up doing time in a Deep Purple tribute show before meeting. I know that you met guitarist Laurie Raymond and joined Stoker, but before that, you were in a Purple tribute outfit. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Sure. Well, just to lead you into that, if you don't mind, with the M16s finishing in 1990, the guitarist and I actually formed another band called Dead Man's Hand. Now, Dead Man's Hand, again, in the early 90s, pretty much to what I'm doing now, I started, putting my feelers out. And whilst I was in the M16s, I also started work with Stoker in 1992. Great guitar player, great songwriter, Laurie Raymond, wrote everything for Stoker, and they'd already had several albums out beforehand. And I really enjoyed it because I learned so much in that band in regards to certain pitches, tunings, different, I'd pick a melody line and Laurie Raymond would say to me, how about you do this? And he'd play it on guitar where we thought my vocal probably should go. And I'd try that and go, wow, that's a great idea. Why didn't I come up with that? And so I learned a lot of different, how to attack a song and how to approach it from Laurie. But you also mentioned I was in a Deep Purple show. And that Deep Purple show, actually, I ended up not playing in Australia in that particular show. I ended up touring New Zealand in that show. Okay. And that was around 92 as well, 92, 93. Oh, no, hang on a minute. That was about 94, I think. And that's where I first met Laurie Marlowe, who is, of course, in Black Label now. And Laurie was the bass player in the Australian Deep Purple show. And again, it was a great experience for several reasons. Meeting some really top musicians to start off with, plus playing some of the best songs ever written. I mean, I'm a Deep Purple fan.
Sure.
And it was just a great experience to actually travel overseas and gig in New Zealand. It was fantastic, and the crowds treated you like you were actually Deep Purple.
Nice.
Which is fantastic. And the other thing is we had to cut the tour short and come back because the real Deep Purple were coming out to tour. When we got back to Australia, they cancelled the tour. So we cut our tour short for nothing. But it was a great experience.
That's one of my questions as well. What did you take away from... Because you were with Stoker for 5 years. Yes. And to tell you the truth, I mean, I was pretty much immersed in heavy metal in Sydney in the early to mid-'80s. So I bought that debut album in 86, and I definitely saw Stoker live, the first lineup. I know I think they're originally from Queensland, how's my memory. But Laurie Raymond was and is a great guitar player, another guy who just underrated and unknown. And again, it's part of the purpose of this show is to have these guys exposed because I think they deserve it.
That's true.
And looking back, Stoker, they were one of the more authentic heavy metal bands playing the Sydney scene in the mid-'80s.
I would agree with that.
And because there were a lot of bands, but some of the material was pretty weak, but not Stoker. And that album, still the first one, I think it's Too Wild to Tame, still stands up. Very, very Norbum, new wave of British heavy metal sounding, and I loved it. Still love it.
Oh yeah, they were a great band, and I was surprised that I got the opportunity to actually perform with them, and particularly for 5 years. I loved the stuff that they did, and even the stuff that Laurie wrote whilst I was in the band was really, really well thought out, well written music and lyrics, and I thought it was just terrific. Again, as I said before, I learned so much from him. Just because of, I guess he had a lot of control over the songs because he wrote everything.
Sure. And
he knew in his mind what he wanted. He'd say, "Oh, can you make this song sound a little bit like the guy from Smokey? Can you make this?"
So you did demo material with Stoker.
Say again?
You did demo material with Stoker.
Yes, that's right.
Good.
And he did. Funnily enough, with Laurie, he brought out a country album as well, which only sold in Queensland. And I think I sang about half a dozen songs on that album.
Okay, good.
Yeah, it's just another side track from.
Didn't know that.
What I normally do.
Well, mate, you've got a great rock voice, and recently I only learnt that in the early '90s, around this time period, you took vocal lessons from former Bombers frontman Tyrone Coates.
Correct.
And may I say, mate, that the lessons paid off, because over time your vocal range and delivery is amazing. And as an example, I'd invite anyone to listen to the tune Fallen Angel off Black Label's Blood Money CD, which we'll play later. Tyrone, what was it like to have, you're obviously aware of his time in the Bombers, and he as a vocalist has a phenomenal range. What did you get off
vocalist. And he, look, the reason I went to Tyrone, when I first joined Stoker, to be honest, I couldn't reach all the notes I was required to reach on some of the songs that had already been recorded, and I was a bit worried about it. And and the bass player in Stoker at the time was a fellow by the name of Ellie Tarazi. And Ellie said to me, he said, "Man, I'm taking some vocal lessons with this guy. You should probably, if you want to go higher in your range, you should go and see him." I said, "Oh yeah, who is it?" So he told me. I said, "Oh, what, the guy from the Bombers?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Oh wow, okay." So I contacted Ty, and he made a massive difference to my vocals. And as you said, I appreciate what you said. I know from that point that my vocals did start becoming better. It took me several months to really utilize what he taught me, but it's definitely done me a lot of good over the years, because I don't get sore throats. I don't have any difficulty like I used to in the early days. I'd end up doing a gig and couldn't speak for 2 or 3 days, And
you need it now because your time is very busy with 2 or 3 different outfits.
So much, but that's correct, yes.
Steve, before we get on to Black Label, a band which you've given nearly 2 decades to, I want to read a quote from my brother who once wrote,
Yep.
"I have seen Black Label a bunch of times over the years, and without any shadow of a doubt, they are the best live band in Australia and have been for many years now. Forget comparisons to AC/DC, the Tats and the like. Black Label are the genuine article, and they are on par with any of this planet's best heavy rock bands, whoever you care to name. What most people don't realise is that Australia is damn lucky to have a high calibre band like Black Label in its ranks, and they should not be taken for granted. Blood Money, the band's 4th album, is one of the most underrated heavy rock albums to come out of Australia ever. Mate, the only way I can follow that endorsement and to verify it is with a tune. So, From the Blood Money album, here are the mighty Black Label with Brothers in Arms."
Thank you.
Black Label there with Brothers in Arms lifted off Blood Money, which is without a doubt one of the best rock albums to come out of Australia. Steve, who came up with the melody and riff for Brothers in Arms?
Brothers in Arms, okay. The guitarist at the time, Ross Flynn, Newcastle lad. That particular album, he had a lot of influence. Both he actually and Laurie Marlowe, the bass player, did a lot of the riff writing. The vocal melody was mine, and I love the song. Obviously, so many of our tracks, probably, we've probably got half a dozen tracks overall of the stuff that we've released as Black Label, has a motorcycle overtone. And that's one of those songs. Brothers in Arms is one of those tracks. Is about camaraderie with your mates, and I just love the actual feeling of the song and what it means. So the way that track was put together, I was mainly Ross and Laurie were the main instigators of writing the riffs, which they were mostly through that album, was those two guys. And the rest of it was built up afterwards, the vocals and the lyrics were usually written after the tunes were sort of instigated,
Okay. So that album, which I think is one of the band's strongest, was released 5 years ago now. Yeah. Sales-wise, how has that album done for you?
Well, it's made it's got us noticed overseas. We'd had it released for a while ourselves, on all the digital networks, plus physical CDs. And a couple of years ago, we were contacted because of that album by a record distributor in France called Bad Reputation Records. Mm-hmm. And funnily enough, the owner of the record company bought the CD. Like, he didn't come to us and say, I've got a record label, can I have one of your CDs, He actually bought it from us. And when he contacted us later, I remembered his name from buying the CD. What he wanted to do was he wanted to be able to release the CD in Europe, which to cut a long story short, that's what he did. So we ended up taking it down off iTunes ourselves in Europe, and he then re-released it in Europe from Bad Reputation Records. But what we also did, it was my suggestion too at the time, not long prior to that, we just released a live album from when we played in Germany.
That's Live in Berlin.
Live in Berlin. Of course, many of the tracks off the Live in Berlin album are the same tracks that are on the Blood Money album, but obviously we played them live. And so I suggested to Eric from the record company, I said, look, why don't you release both albums as a package, just to, make it, we're a new band as far as Europe's concerned. Why don't you just package it as a double album, which is what they did do, and we sold quite a number over there. And I think, we wouldn't have sold those if it wasn't for the record company, Bad Reputation. And, of course, if it wasn't for the strength of that album, as you said, I don't think Bad Reputation would have been interested in us.
That's pleasing to hear, because I've always wondered, how the band have gone sales-wise outside of Australia. I know you've got a solid fan base here, but particularly in some of those hard rock areas, Spain and Germany and those kind of areas. That's pleasing to hear. But so the band have had a few lineup changes since the inception. A couple of notables were Kevin Pratt replacing Tim Gore, and Laurie, who you've mentioned, Laurie Marlowe, filling Brad White's shoes. And I know it's some years back, but apart from experience, what did Kevin and Laurie bring to the band, and was it noticeable, do you think, when they first jammed?
When Kevin first joined the band, and that was in 1999 now, I think, when Kev first joined, I was blown away, because obviously I'd seen Kev when he played in Boss and when he was in BB Steel. Right. And, I didn't know him personally at the time, and I was really perplexed, because I think at the very time when he joined us, he was actually in Swanee's band. And
that's right.
I was really, I said to Geordie, are you kidding me? Kev Pratt wants to join. And he said, yeah. I said, I don't understand why. I said, he's gigging with Swanee, and Swanee's a good mate of ours too, I'm just saying he was gigging with Swanee, and he's done all these things. He's toured the world. What would he want to join us for? He said, well, he wants to. Well, it was Kev's influence on that first album. He wrote a lot of that first album, The Dealer. He is an amazing guitar player. Great slide player. I never knew he could play slide guitar, and he is just phenomenal as a slide player. And then obviously after that album, when we were between the first and second album was Lawless. Laurie Marlowe joined the band. And again, I was going, well, are you kidding me? This guy was in heaven, and he toured the world as well. And I don't know, I couldn't understand it. But both of those guys, their songwriting influence in the band has been phenomenal because they've both made such huge contributions. Of course, Kev left the band. I think it was 2007 when Kev left the band. He was with us for 8 years in the band. But even now, Laurie's songwriting, lyrical content, and riff writing is just awesome. It really is.
Look, I've got a little side story. I remember seeing you guys one night at Shell Harbour Workers a few years ago supporting the Tats.
Yeah.
Incidentally, I think it was the last time I ever saw Pete Wells. But and I remember that Kevin was so loud that night. And I've seen a lot of bands and loud bands, Manowar and Motorhead, spring to mind. But his amps were on full tilt that night.
Yes.
So
that was nothing unusual.
That night he seemed louder than ever. But so what's Kevin up to nowadays?
Okay, Kev lives on the central coast of New South Wales, and he does occasionally do solo gigs doing blues. He uses a slide guitar, but it's a slide acoustic, and he plays all these really old blues numbers, like from the 40s and 50s, and really good stuff that no one ever hears. And he sings them, and just something I never thought he'd do is he'd go and do this thing on his own, and he does it. His technique is so amazing. It holds the crowd just as he's playing,
Sure.
And also, probably about a bit over a year ago now, when Love Child were releasing their Circus in Town album, they had a CD launch in Sydney, and they had a couple of bands supporting him, and Dennis actually asked me if I could put something together just as an opening act, as a warmer. So what I did is I called Kev Pratt, and he and I did a duo, just doing, different songs. We even did a couple of Led Zeppelin songs, Gallows Pole and stuff like that. So Kev and I had not played together for about 7 years, I think. 6.5, 7 years, and we put these songs together, and it was a real joy performing with him again because he's such a good player.
Agreed. And I think looking back, bands like Boss and Heaven here. To tell you the truth, that was I couldn't believe I'd go and see Black Label and I'd pinch myself and think, wow, what a hell of a lineup we got tonight, But mate, obviously. Sorry.
I was going to say, the interesting thing about what you just said then, people obviously were coming to see us and realised who the guitar player was, Kev Pratt, and realised who the bass player was, Marlowe. They would come to the gig with Boss albums and Heaven albums, and the guys,
as they should. Why not?
Finding those albums, it was amazing,
Mate, obviously a loud and tight rhythm unit is integral to any decent-sounding outfit, and I don't think you could find a better pairing than Laurie Marlowe and Geordie Muscat. Agreed. Had Geordie drummed with any other bands before Black Label?
Yeah, he did a few different things, but I think his main, the main thing that he played with was a band called Blue Dog. They didn't really, they weren't well known everywhere, but in Sydney they were well known. In the 90s, early 90s, because in fact Geordie actually started with Black Label in 1994. So it was prior to that, obviously, and Blue Dog were an originals blues rock type band, and I guess that's his, I want to say claim to fame, but that's the band that he would be most remembered in, for particular Sydney siders.
Oh, I didn't know that. So look, I know that you've had some lineup shuffles, but your current twin guitar attack of Mick Fryer and Steve Downs, they're both a pretty good fit, aren't they? And I imagine when that particular style of band have needed a lead player, it's not the kind of gig which just anyone can fill.
That's true.
Do you know what I mean?
No,
Can't just walk in and...
I agree.
So
you got to... Our stuff, I won't say the songs are overly complicated, but the playing, like the guitar playing involved, particularly the twin solos, take a little bit of time to get right, particularly when those guys didn't write them. But Mick Fryer, he does a lot of solo gigs as well. you'll see him on Facebook. He does an exceptionally large amount of solo gigs, same as Dennis Val does actually. From Love Child, he does a lot of solo gigs. And Steve Down, he's actually, should I mention it, without his makeup, you know who he is. He's actually in Hysteria as well.
Yeah.
So he has to shave off his little mo and little goatee every time he plays Ace Frehley in the
Hysteria
show, and then he tries to grow it back before our gig. So
make sure there's no makeup left.
That's right, that too. But you know, we've been really fortunate over the years to be able to attract such a high caliber of guitar player to keep the ball rolling, really.
Well, it's an integral sound, isn't it? You can't just, that's what I mean, you can't just get anyone in.
That's true.
You know.
Yes, correct.
So Black Label played a bunch of European dates in 2008, which resulted in the Live in Berlin CD. Yep. So it must have been a blast to play some of those countries, Steve.
Absolutely. Germany is, I just love Germany. We didn't do a lot of gigs over there, but we went over originally to play at the 2008 Popcom. There's 10 Australian bands went over there.
Right.
And it was a great night. What we did first of all, we were on the first night, and so what happened is that the 5 of the Australian bands out of the 10 Australian bands played on the first night, and the other bands who weren't playing that night would come along and be your roadies. They would help you lug your gear on and off, so that there's quick changeovers. The following night, of course, those second 5 bands were playing, and we'd go along and we helped them lug in and out. You know, it was a bit of bit of camaraderie there. What the other bands did after that, I don't know, but ourselves and another band called The Vagrants, who were on the same bill, then did a mini tour, which took us from Germany, like in East Berlin, over to the Netherlands. We played at a place called Westerhaar. Mm-hmm. And then played, funny, and when we arrived at like a little cafe, we thought, we can't play in a little cafe, but by night time it turned into a raging nightclub, you know. And then we came back into Germany after that and played at a place called Uelzen, which isn't very far from Hamburg. That was great too. There was more people than the place could hold, so they were all hanging outside as well, looking into the windows. It was just terrific. And we were supposed to play in France. That got blown out, but went to Amsterdam and then over to England and played in London, and just a really, really good time.
It's a shame you can't get on some of those festivals, because I've always thought that the band would go over well at some of those big hard rock and metal shows like Wacken.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
I agree.
Definitely.
There's a lot of festivals over there would really suit our style of playing.
Sure.
And I think particularly the reception we got whilst in Germany, I reckon we go over really well.
No, agreed.
Yeah.
Mate, we're coming to a close, but before we do, I want to plug some upcoming Black Label gigs. So May the 9th, you're at Tattles's Hotel in Penrith.
Yep.
May the 10th, you're at the Bald-Faced Stag in Leichhardt.
Yep.
June the 5th, you're at the Bull and Bush Hotel in Baulkham Hills. June 13th, you're at the South Hurstville RSL. And June 20th, you're at the Penrith Hotel.
Yep.
At 303 High Street in Penrith there. These dates and band info, cool T-shirts, CDs and so much more can be found at blacklabelaustralia.com.au. Steve, before you go, what does the rest of 2015 have in store? You've mentioned that you're working on an EP, Black Label EP.
Okay.
What about for yourself?
Well, obviously, we want to, we haven't played interstate for a while, and part of that's because we're family men as well, and
Sure.
We've all got mortgages.
Sure.
And touring is not a cheap, people think you make money on touring, not necessarily so. But we want to go up into Queensland. We haven't been to Queensland for quite a number of years, and we want to come back down to Melbourne. The last time I played in Melbourne was 2010 when we toured with the Angels, and so we definitely want to go back down there. We keep getting messages on our Facebook pages saying, when are you coming back? When are you coming back?
Sure.
So we want to do that. Also, me on a personal note, I'm recording other things as well again. I recorded on Sunday, just gone actually, a friend of mine, his band, his name is Chris Brockbank, and I actually played with him several years ago as well. We did another Deep Purple show called Kinda Purple, and did a few shows with him. He was playing guitar in that show, and he's got a bunch of songs that he's shown me, and I recorded one on Sunday, and I want to record some more with him, and you know, I just like to try different things, different styles, and sing other people's songs, like friends who are writing songs. I want to try their songs out, and you know, because obviously, I'm not saying sticking in one band's a bad thing, but you know, if you're in just a small circle, it's hard to sometimes expand your horizons, and
Sure.
so I try and delve in other areas now so that I can pick up some ideas myself, and you know, and also just try new styles. So this particular band is probably very much Deep Purple oriented. The way that the guitar player is very much a Richie Blackmore style player. The keyboard player is very much a John Lord style player. You know, so I really like the sound of it straight away, and so I'm going to do some more recording there. Whether anything comes of that, I don't know. But as you mentioned before, the Black Label is always the main focus. But you know, sometimes it's good to get away from each other as well.
Sure. Look, Steve, thanks so much for your time today.
Thank you.
Been great catching up. Many of us out there love Black Label and indeed your solo material, and it's been a great honour to have you on the show today.
Thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure to be here.
Brilliant. Let's close out with one of your choice cuts. What would you like to hear and why?
Oh, goodness me. There was a song off the Lawless album, which I wrote it, and it was actually about my brother. I actually wrote it about Ted. But that's more of a ballad, and I suppose it's not a good idea to finish the show.
No, your choice, mate.
Okay, In My Heart was a song, but that as I said, that was more of a ballad, and I wrote it thinking about my brother.
Brilliant.
One night.
Very nice. That's a great closure. Thanks for your time today, Steve. Really appreciate it.
All right, take care, and thank you so much for having me on.